When we think about war, we think about lives lost, battles to be fought, death, tragedy, sorrow. And I was truly shocked when a former Royal Marines commando and close friend of mine, who had served 2 tours to Afghanistan, shared the shocking fact that more of his friends died from suicide off the battlefield than on the battlefield. It made me wonder what was behind this, and I want to raise a spotlight on this issue so that we can spare the lives of thousands of men and women as they leave the life of service and enter back into civilian life. What information do they need to get at the right time? What's the cause of this shocking fact that I just learned? A very good friend of mine, someone I look up to and I think is really, really inspirational, has agreed to come on the show tonight and share his story. And he is a former Royal Marines commando, and he'll tell us a little bit about that, of course. He was based in Poole with the Special Boat Service, and he was attached to the Special Forces and had a number of tours to Afghanistan, so he has an incredible story to tell. So join me in a very warm welcome of my friend Ashley Pawson. Ashley, welcome.
Hi, nice to be here. Originally, I'm from Lincolnshire, very sort of rural area, quiet, sleepy town. Yeah, I never really had any inspiration to join the military. I had a very loving mother, love her to this day. I had a father who was never really a father, was never really around. No brothers, no sisters. So yeah, I sort of lacked that family environment, and I think that was what attracted me mainly to the military. I saw my father 2 weeks before I was joining. Hadn't seen him in probably 2 or 3 years, and he asked me what I was doing with my life, and I said, "Oh, I'm actually going into the Royal Marines in 2 weeks' time." And he proceeded to laugh in my face and said, "You won't last 5 minutes." I didn't just do it to prove him wrong, but it was definitely a motivator. Played in the back of your mind through the hard times when you're freezing cold or physically, emotionally exhausted, and it's just little things like that that give you that edge to get through it. You know, you have to have a motivation. And making my mum proud, one thing I always wanted to do. You know, it must have been horrible for her at times. Yeah, she was proud of what I was doing, but the emotional stress that she had to go through when I went away to Afghan and must have been awful for her. I don't ever think I was fully prepared. And I joined. I was going in there blind, really. I love the idea of it, but actually the reality of it, I would never have been ready for. I remember turning up on my first day, and it was just sort of like the shock of capture. Your head shaved straight into a block, a big room, just a bed locker, given all your kit, taught how to wash, clean yourself, iron, basically going back to basics. Some guys there, are 30 years old. Some guys are 16 years old. Some guys have got their own houses. Some guys have not even learnt to drive. Some of the hardest times I've ever been through, emotionally, physically, I've seen guys just break out into tears over the smallest things because you're just on a knife edge, whether that be through physical exhaustion, mental exhaustion. It's a whole roller coaster of emotions going through it, and this is where you build such strong bonds with the people around you. This is where your brotherhood comes from. You learn so much more about yourself. When I joined, I was very selfish as a person. I didn't really care about anyone but myself. But I wasn't punctual at all. I didn't have much self-discipline, and these are all things that along the way in that 8 months are drilled into you, and you grow so much as a person. You either meet the standard or you don't. And that's what I really loved about it. That's what pushed me. I did not want to ever be below standard. So although I was better at some things than I was others, I always strive to be the best at what I could be at it.
And do you think you've carried forward that training into your life? Or is it something that you are trained and you have those attributes whilst you're in the Marines to survive? But you forget all about them, or is it really deeply ingrained? Because you're probably, you're young at 20, but if you're 30 joining, maybe you can't change your ways.
It's probably like, having bad habits of driving a car or something. You soon have these bad habits weaned out. But it's definitely something I've taken with me. I'm very much a tidy, clean person now. I was going to use the word clean freak, but maybe a bit.
OCD, maybe?
That's a borderline, yeah. But just things like making your bed. It's the first thing I do when I get up in the morning, get out of bed, make my bed, and then have a shower, and then go make breakfast. And this is things that you take with you. Self-discipline and punctuality are massive to me. And those are things that I've taken with me. And people say, oh, well, this is because you were in the Marines. Yeah, good. Like, I'm glad. Some people find it strange. I can't understand people who get up in the morning and just leave their bed the way it is. And they say, well, I'm going to get back in it later.
But this discipline is very important in life because it's translated to your food, to your fitness, and also to paying attention to the small details, which actually make a difference between somebody being excellent and just average at their job.
Yeah. And it is. There's a lot of fine details, and that some people see them as irrelevant. But if you're actually committed, then the small details are the relevant details to progress further in life.
I agree with that. But listening to you talking so passionately about joining the Marines and being in it and all that it had to offer you, and you got to go on 2 tours, I'm just so surprised that you left after 7 years. What made you leave?
I mean, I loved the job. I did. I loved the people around me. And I hate to say it, but it was money orientated. A lot of guys are leaving, earning good money doing personal security, doing other things, having massive amounts of freedom, and you just think, okay, and your your priorities change as you get older in that environment.
Mm-hmm.
Where when I first did my first tour of Afghanistan, I remember my paycheck was, and this was with what they call danger pay, was about £1,300 a month, £1,400 a month.
Mm-hmm.
It really is a bit of an embarrassment to be on the front line, getting paid such a little amount.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that increases over time, but when you get to a certain age and a certain point, you prioritize other things. You want to be able to maybe provide for your family, or get a house, or get a nice car, or and maybe not have the risk. As much as I love the job, in all honesty, my first tour of Afghanistan, I thought I was indestructible. We were going into section attacks, or kicking in doors, and the fear wasn't there. And then, unfortunately, things happen. Incidents happen, and you gain, or the fear grows inside you. You think, oh God, that could have been me. And then, as time goes on, it does get a hold of you a little bit. And in all honesty, maybe by that point, I wouldn't have wanted to do another tour.
Yeah. So then you wouldn't have been the best that you could be, and knowing your competitive spirit, that would go against your grain.
Yeah, because I wouldn't have been as effective as what somebody who had full confidence in themselves, or second guessing yourself at some point. And it was something that I probably never would have admitted at the time, because it would have showed me as a weak character in that environment.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, looking back now, it was the right decision for me to just say, no, that's enough.
Well, it takes courage to have such deep insight, if I might say. I mean, there's courage on the battlefield, but there's also courage to get to know yourself and know what you want from life. And, you gave your service, and now you can serve your family and your friends and the community in different ways, which we'll come to. But first of all, I wanted to ask you, when you came out, like, you had such a rigorous training getting in. So presumably there was a very stringent program getting you ready to train for life, because life would have stopped, for that period of 7 years that you were on tour and things move on and, digital world takes off, etc. So tell me a little bit about the training or the preparation you had for leaving the Marines.
Unfortunately, the preparation for leaving the Marines wasn't slightly non-existent. There are avenues for credited learning, but it's not so much encouraged. It's at your own will. It's sort of, if you want to do it, if you want to do this. But most people who are leaving have a job to walk into. But sometimes they because you're so naive to the outside world, a lot of people are joined at 16. They don't have obviously I joined a little bit later, but I didn't have much knowledge of the world outside of the Marines. And I ideally would have wanted somebody to sit me down and say, yeah, you're walking into this great job, but why don't you just go and do a backup just in case, or, where are you going to live, and, how are you going to support this, or have you thought about what's going to happen when you leave? None of these questions were asked me. And I do have to say, it isn't probably 9 years ago now since I left. So this may have changed, but I very much doubt it.
Because there's amazing, I've been doing a little bit of research in preparation for our chat, and there's very, very good, the Royal Marine Association are affiliated to the Royal Marines charity, and they've raised a huge amount of money which they've deployed to people who get into trouble from post-traumatic stress, depression, addiction, unemployment, marital breakdown, or sadly bereavement for their families. So it seems like there's an amazing safety net if you reach the bottom. But, and I know that you'll probably tell us that you had some dark days, but there isn't anything to prevent people from reaching the bottom. Maybe I'm being naive and I've missed the point, but it seems like you've got the training in the Marines, then you decide to leave, you have life skills, but you don't know how to deploy them. And then if you get into trouble, there's an amazing safety net with the charities, and there's something missing in between. Am I right in thinking that?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, the prevention is better than the cure. If the safety nets were put out to start with, just to be sure. But I mean, a lot of lads sort of, it's a very masculine environment in the Marines, which is good for, it's good for
men.
Men, yeah, for a group of men who are doing the job that they do, to have a masculine environment and be men around each other.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lack of vulnerability there. So nobody wants to be vulnerable. Nobody wants to be the weak link. Nobody wants to say, you know what, I'm actually having a bad day, or I'm actually really struggling with this, because they think in their head, I think they'll be ridiculed for it.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the end of my first tour, the PTSD part of it. You had, what's it called? Basically, you stop at Cyprus on the way home from Afghanistan for 2 nights.
Debrief.
In an enclosed space, and they just say, okay, right, you're going to get drunk tonight and just enjoy each other's company, and decompression. That's it. It's helpful because you have a few drinks, but there's still that lack of vulnerability. Nobody actually wants to turn around and go, oh mate, actually I'm really scared of coming back because I'm having these dreams, or I'm worried about the way I feel, and that's what needs to be addressed. Is I remember walking into an office and just sitting down and being asked if I was okay. Yeah, I'm okay.
But were you okay? Then, were you, Ash?
At that point, I think I was. I think I was all right at that point. I was very much in control. It was later on when I came out and involved substances and drinking, that my mental health really suffered. I think I had a strong mental hold on things until that point. Yeah.
But do you think that maybe your strength mentally wasn't as great as you think, which is why you started, resorting to substances, etc., and we're in denial?
I think being surrounded by the guys, by being in that group of guys, it softens the blow of it. I mean, it's a way of dealing with it because you're with everyone
Mm-hmm.
and you're occupied. I think that the problem is when you come out and you're left to your own devices, surrounded by civilians who haven't been through what you've been through, and you can't talk to them the way that you could talk to other Marines.
So what you're saying is that you're feeling vulnerable and you can't talk to your mates, but also you can't really talk to civilians because they, have a shared experience. So there really is something missing in between, being able to talk to somebody or having somebody like you being an ambassador for somebody thinking of coming out of the Marines to talk to.
There needs to be, in my eyes, an avenue to go down of just thinking, okay, but I do actually agree with that. This may have changed slightly. I do agree that social media is, as much as it can be the devil at points, is opening people's eyes to mental health awareness and especially suicide rates with men and stuff like this. And people are more accepted for saying how they feel.
Mm. And you said you lost more friends to suicide than you did on the battlefield. Is that right?
I've definitely lost more friends to suicide, than on the battlefield.
I mean, that's an incredible. It's tragic. Whereas when you look up through the Office of National Statistics for the death rates of military servicemen in the military, it's much lower than suicide death rates of the general public. Although there has been a slight rise in the army in the last 5 years, but it's harder to get the data for former military individuals because maybe it's 5-10 years after coming out of service that the post-traumatic stress hits, which is kind of what you're describing, isn't it? And then maybe not related to the being in the military. It's just, he's just not got his act together and look at him now, or her, as the case may be, because we do have women who were very prominent in the military, of course. Let's not forget that.
Yeah, no, agreed. But why is that not documented? Why are they not being documented for being veterans?
Yeah, well, I'm sure there is, and perhaps I'm not actually looking in the right places, and it's something that the charities would have all that data. But it's having done a preliminary look, I wasn't able to put my hands on that data as easily as I was the data on death rates from suicide inside. So there seems to be a disconnect in perception or availability of that data. I'm not saying the data isn't there. I didn't find it, but perhaps if I'd done a more detailed search, I probably could have found it.
Another point is, there's guys who are being discharged from the military for mental health issues, when actually their strongest coping mechanism may be the people around them who understand them the most. So is extracting them from an environment where they actually are coping into an environment where nobody understands what they're going through.
That's an interesting perspective, yeah, because, you've had friends who've got discharged for physical reasons, knee injuries and whatnot, but, if the best environment and the best cure is to stay in that environment, that needs to be looked at, doesn't it? That's a very interesting thought. Interesting.
I agree that maybe they may not be fully operational, for tours of Afghanistan tours of any operational duty may not be feasible to them. But surely there's jobs within the military that they would be able to do to keep them in and keep an eye on them, have that support group around them.
I think that's really interesting. But that wasn't your path, and you sort of made an elective decision that you were going to come out and do other things with your life, because the very strong thread I'm hearing through this discussion is, family meant everything to you. The sense of community was why you went in. It's actually ironically why you came out, so you could provide for your mum and your family. And when you came out, then you weren't prepared and you didn't have that skills, although you've drawn from what you've learned in the military and also those innate skills you had to get you through it. So you basically overcame the dark days yourself without not much help, and over the last 5 years managed to then get work, did you? Was there a trigger? Was there somebody who helped you? Was there a friend in particular who put their arm around you and said, come on now, I'm going to give you a leg up? Or how did your journey happen?
We probably deserve a mention, that's for sure. One in particular was the guy who employed me when I left. I had known him for a couple of years before I left the military, and he offered me an opportunity to leave because he knew that I wanted to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And he was fantastic. You know, he sort of, he could see that I was so naive to the outside world, and because I knew him quite well anyway, it was a good working relationship. It wasn't just a work relationship. It was a friendship as well. And he's really sort of taken me under his wing and shown me about business and getting into property and how to make your money work for you and all these things that I never even thought twice about. And actually going through, when I went through a really dark time, he noticed it. And lucky enough, he sent me away to a retreat to get my head in the right place, and it really worked. And I really owe him a lot to be in the position I am now, because without a doubt, if he wasn't around, I don't know where I would be.
Amazing. Friend, father figure, mentor. You were lucky, but you made your own luck because you probably recognised, the innate qualities that you had, and that how you were going to be able to be mentored, because some people are not open to it, but you were actually open to that. And maybe it's because you didn't have a father figure and he stepped into that role. Do you think maybe that?
Yeah, I would say he's definitely been an influential person in my life, and still to this day is. I'm always learning from him, and I think somebody who knows that much about business, and you never stop learning from them as long as you listen and are willing. Somebody like that is invaluable.
Well, I think you were lucky. I happen to know who you're talking about because he's also, helped us with Iona, and he's helped so many people achieve their dreams. So I think, there is an element of luck in being in the right place at the right time, but also you've got to spot the opportunities and be willing to take those, which is what you did. I don't want you to paint yourself, or me to allow you paint yourself as somebody who's come out of the Marines because they want to make loads of money. Yes, you need, money to survive and thrive. But presumably you will learn from this amazing mentor and individual that you want to give back. And you have, because you've already told me loads of stories about working with animals in particular. I just want to hear about your plans for the future and how you are going to give back some of your experience to help other people or animals. Or
It sort of started with I went through some therapy, which anyone who is dubious about therapy, I would recommend it to anyone, whether you think you're unfixable or whatever. It has been a revelation to me to actually put yourself out there and be vulnerable and be honest with yourself. I was able to understand what I was feeling and why I was feeling that way, and therapy really helped me get through that. So I just want to say, if anyone is struggling, therapy is not a weak thing to do. It is probably the strongest thing you could ever do. But that started with the therapy, and the therapist actually said, you can either pay me or you can pay it forward by doing something good. So I went off and I worked with an animal sanctuary and helped there, and actually did some fundraising, which was very, very successful thanks to certain people. Yeah, we raised quite a lot of money, and it's changed the whole charity really. It was very heartwarming, and yeah, I'd love to move forward, and actually give something myself to the animal sort of world, maybe I should say.
yeah, I think that's good. And I think people who love animals and are close to animals are always, often in my experience, very kind, because animals are even more vulnerable than us. So we're seeing a softer side here, Ash, rather than just the Royal Marines Commando, which is good. And I was telling my youngest daughter tonight I was going to be interviewing you, and I always ask her, what questions should I ask? And she said to me, I think you should ask him if he had a time machine, what would he do or what would he change? So I've got to ask you this question. If you had a time machine, what would you change about the last 10 years, 20 years of your life?
Well, some people would probably think that I would want to go back and not go to Afghanistan, but that whole experience, so that wasn't a job. It was just a life-changing experience, and it built me as a person, and I don't regret any of that. Maybe one thing, my stepfather passed away a couple of years ago, and maybe I wish I could go back and be a bit more present with him and with my mum. And as much as I love my mum and I loved him, I don't think I was there enough. And this is one thing, what life has made me realize is it's not all about the money, and it's not, about what car you drive. And it really is about being present for the people in your life that you care about, because at some point that will all end.
Yeah.
And look back and say, I did enough. Or will you look back and say, I wish I'd have been there more often? So when my stepfather passed away, I really thought, I wish I'd have seen him more often. So yeah, that's probably one thing that I would like to go back and change.
But I think, you're lucky that your mum's still alive and she's healthy, and, you have a good relationship with her. So in some ways, you can be sure that you have no regrets there, right?
It's definitely made me and her become closer, because obviously that, his passing has made me realize this, and obviously he's not there now, and I feel like I've got to be there more. But it isn't a burden for me. It's actually just made me and her so much closer, and it's a blessing in disguise,
It's lovely to hear you say that. And I guess the counter question to, having a regret is, and we're coming to the end of this interview now, is having a dream. And, if I said to you, look, you've got 3 wishes, what would you, you might have no wish. You might be just happy just as you are. But, if you could have anything you wanted and you had 3 wishes, what would they be? I always ask the hard questions last, right?
One is obviously to look at. I know I say it's not about money, but maybe just to be able to look after the people that I care about.
Mm-hmm.
Another, to spend enough time with the people that I love. I've got two close friends who are in the Marines who work with me now as well, and they've just had one's had a little girl, one's a boy, one's my goddaughter. So one is to spend enough time with all of them, and then I think thirdly is probably just eventually have a family of my own. I definitely, it's something that I've neglected so far, to my own peril, I think. And I think, I definitely would love to have a family of my own. Being surrounded by them and how happy they are has definitely made me open my eyes a little bit.
Well, that will come. And I think sometimes, timing is everything in life, and you have to be in the right place emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually. And then all the stars collide to the perfect outcome. So you have all that to look forward to.
Yeah. I definitely, there's still work I need to do on myself, but I'm definitely getting there. I'm in a much better place than I was. The past couple of years have been really good for me, just recognizing where I am emotionally, and and moving forward.
Well, I think, Ash, you're an amazing ambassador for somebody who has not just survived, but has thrived and has done the Royal Marines huge pride, both inside and outside a life of service. And I'm extremely grateful for you sharing your story and going into it in such deep and personal level. And I'm hoping that this will really help other people who listen to learn about the art of survival, and maybe we can do more work together to package up information that can be given in that transition point to help people in their journey, so they don't have to go through the dark times that you did, or where, you know, they can be helped and give that help in conjunction with the amazing charities and the incredible institution of the Royal Marines. So thank you so much for joining me this evening.
Oh, you're welcome, honestly, and thank you for having me.
Ashley's story touched a chord with me. I wonder how many more Ashleys are out there, men or women, who have given their service to their country and then transition back to the community and really struggle with life as a civilian, with their mental and sometimes their physical health. As a physician, I see this on a daily basis. What can we do to raise the profile of this issue so that we can tackle it as a community to help these men and women transition back and lead their best life?